Welcome to Crypto in America Live, the only show bringing you candid conversations on the biggest news stories, legal issues, and policy developments shaping the crypto world. Every Friday at 12:30 Eastern. It's May Day, guys.
It is.
It is. Happy May. Wow.
Happy May.
Yeah.
How are we in May?
I know.
I don't know.
How are you guys in Vegas? Got him.
Got a lot to go through.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Gerald and I are out in Vegas. We are covering the XRP Las Vegas conference taking place yesterday and today. And it's been pretty good so far, right, Gerald? So I've been coming to this conference for the last 4 years. My first time was in 2023, right when I started covering crypto. It was a very small conference then. It's grown over the years. And it's not a Ripple conference, right? It is sponsored by Ripple. And Brad Garlinghouse was here yesterday, and I did sit down with him for an interview. But it's not a Ripple conference. It is literally just the holders of the XRP token. And super enthusiastic, super nice people. But it is very eye-opening to be walking around this conference. We're actually at the Paris Hotel. And it's funny, like the XRP community they went through a lot with the Ripple case, right? And so when that whole thing was going down, they were sort of, there were some champions of that case. And we're actually going to have one of those champions of the case on in just a few minutes with us, John Deaton. But I mean, there's sort of like local celebrities around here. And John Deaton certainly is one of those local celebrities. Brad Garlinghouse, obviously CEO of Ripple, is a local celebrity. Most of the Ripple team, actually, the community looks up to here. But it's
you left one off there. You left one off there. Eleanor.
Right, I'm not going to.
Yeah, Eleanor, local celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun, but everybody is very nice and very welcoming. And Gerald's had a good first day, and it's 8 o'clock.
Are you being welcomed by the XRP army? You feel
it's been
included?
Great. Well, I feel like life is easy when you're walking around with Eleanor. I'll say that. So the XRP army is strong, and it's been a lot of fun. It's pretty unique. I think compared to a lot of the other events that I've been to, like it's clear that this is like an incredibly organic kind of thing. Like Eleanor was just saying, like it's holders. And I can't think of even like ETH Denver isn't really about holding ETH, right? Like it's a very different crowd. Yeah. It's not like DAS. It's not like, Consensus. It's a pretty unique event. And so it's been cool to participate this year.
Yeah. I want to apologize to the XRP community that I'm not there. I was supposed to come, but candidly, I was moving the end of this month. So lease was up and I had to take care of this, but you guys are holding down the fort. I think it's all good. Next year, maybe.
Next year. Yeah. We definitely miss you, but we'll be hopefully all together again next year. I wonder where it will be next year. I like the Paris Hotel. It was at MGM last year and then Treasure Island the first year. So I feel like it's been a rotating cast of hotels, but I feel like I'm coming to Vegas with all these crypto conferences that have been here in the last year or two. I've stayed at so many places in Vegas now. I feel like it's like not a second home. That's a definite exaggeration, but it's like
I hope not. Don't get to that stage.
No, never.
I've seen the friendly banter on crypto Twitter between Bitcoin Vegas and XRP Vegas. Is that a real thing on the ground? People are kind of butting heads over it.
It's very much so they always take place in the same week, and it's always sort of a competition between who's got the bigger attendance, who's got the best advertising. I will say XRP has beaten Bitcoin in advertising. And now every year Bitcoin has the sphere, right? It's the Bitcoin, the big Bitcoin globe. It's kind of iconic. But the XRP, and they've taken out tons of hotel graphics. Like hotels are just decked out in XRP. There's like bus wraps with Ripple. I'm actually looking at my hotel window right now. There's an ad for Ripple Treasury, like right outside my window. They've pretty much taken over Las Vegas. And this was an interesting anecdote from my interview with Brad yesterday. Apparently, they tried to buy out the sphere, and the owners of the sphere, or whoever dictates the ads, would only sell ads to Bitcoin and Ethereum. Wow. They would not do anything aside from that. No altcoins.
That's messed up.
Isn't that wild?
That's interesting. Well, I think they're competing with the Fish fam is out here. I think Fish is here for like 3 nights at the Sphere right now. So maybe true. It's an interesting.
We should get a Crypto in America Sphere ad.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm looking at how much that'll set us back.
Yeah. If anyone wants to sponsor it and you're listening,
yeah.
we will welcome
Price
offers. Yeah.
slightly more expensive than a bus, probably.
Yeah.
Well, we have a good show coming up today. John Deaton, as I mentioned, he is Massachusetts Senate candidate round 2, might I add. We all remember when he went up against Elizabeth Warren in 2024. He'll be joining us to talk about his race against the junior Massachusetts Senator, Ed Markey. And then we have Gabor Gurbacs. He is the founder and CEO of OpenAssets, former Van Eck. He helped them take their Bitcoin ETF to market. And we're going to talk about all things tokenization, institutional crypto, and a new partnership that they just rolled out with Chainlink. But as always, let's get to our headlines of the week. And I don't know about you, Gerald, but coming out here on West Coast time, it's so hard to keep up with what's going on the East Coast. So I do feel very sort of out of the loop when it comes to headlines. So when I was putting these together this morning, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've missed, you miss so much. You miss a day in crypto and you feel like you've missed a
lifetime.
Yeah. So, but I think the Clarity Act was definitely, there's always headlines for crypto, right? But we covered it a lot on the show, but there was some movement this week, and it was Senator Tom Tillis saying that he was going to ask Senator Tim Scott, who's the chairman of the banking committee, to move to a markup. It's important because Tillis has sort of been the holdup Republican, at least on the committee. He really wanted more time to hear from the banks, the bank and the crypto stablecoin yield compromise, which has been going on now for, the better part of 3 months. Tillis was like, no, I still want to hear from all of these banking, people involved. And there was some frustration, I think, on members of the committee. They really wanted to get a markup done at the end of April. And Tillis said, no, let's push it to May. But he finally did come out this week and say, I've heard enough, and I think we are ready to move to markup. So I'm going to encourage Tim Scott to do that. Tim Scott said he would schedule a markup in May, and it's looking like maybe second or third week of May. The Senate is out next week for a recess. So yeah, we're moving slowly, but this thing might actually get out of committee where it's been sitting since January in a couple of weeks' time. So that's a development.
That would be great. I would love. My birthday is May 15th. Let's get a markup for my birthday. Let's do that.
Happy birthday, Gerald.
Yeah. A couple weeks early, but yeah, that would be nice. I think Tillis, we've seen him take really strong stances working with Senator Alsobrooks on the stablecoin compromise, and I do really like when we started this headline segment, I was going to say what else can the banks possibly have to say at this point? We've heard it, and then also Tillis being on his way out this year is able to, I think, kind of take this kind of a stance and push things forward. So it's good to see. Hopefully it results in a markup and we get out of committee, and then we can move on to those final 2 or 3 issues that we've been talking about for 4 months now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wondered about Tillis because he has been standing up and raising his hand on a few issues, including Fed chair, and going against the Trump administration, right? He's not afraid to, but I think some of that plays into the fact that he's actually not running again. And so he doesn't really care at this point that, he hasn't got to deal with again because he's not running. So I thought it was interesting too that he came out and said that he really wants to see ethics provisions in there. He's actually the first Republican who's publicly come out and said, if there's not ethics and conflicts of interest sewn into this bill by the time it leaves the Senate, I will actually actively vote against it. It's mostly been a Democrat push from that side of things. And Tillis was actually the first person to come out and say that this week. So just another area where he's weighing in as well.
Yeah. And I think on that issue, it's interesting. We've talked to people on the ground and on the show before about where exactly that language gets put in. And we've talked about how it's not really a Senate banking issue. So this has always been the thing that is going to have to make its way in here somehow. And, speaking of ethics, I know we have another headline, coming in a minute on that point. But yeah, at some point you just kind of have to, deal with the realities that this is a brave new world and people are doing a lot of interesting stuff. And so hopefully we can get this legislation done without, kind of breaking the system. So that would be good.
Yeah, that's a great segue because the ethics issue has not just circled around crypto, right? It's been an age-old problem, like insider trading, and that's been high on the list of to-do things in Congress, allegedly, for a long time, right? Let's ban insider trading. Let's do this and do that when it comes to not letting us be able to kind of trade unfairly in a market where we have more advantage because we know what's going on. And that was put to rest, at least for prediction markets, when it comes to senators yesterday, because Senator Bernie Moreno introduced legislation that passed the Senate unanimously, banning its members and their staff from trading on prediction markets. So I feel like that was just so fast. Like
to start, yeah.
To start. And
it's interesting it was prediction markets first and not, other markets, but maybe a mountain and a molehill or something.
Well, I think this has been one of those problems that I think it like came out of nowhere. And this also, it's like a weird corollary to draw, but I know like when there are real issues, I feel like regulators and Congress will potentially try to step in quickly. So it reminded me of during the sort of DAT craze when the SEC came out pretty quickly and was like, by the way, like we see all these small cap biotech stocks being manipulated, because they were going to be the target companies for these takeovers for these digital asset treasury companies. And for the Senate to say, yeah, no prediction markets, it's like, yeah, we've had enormous issues with insider trading across a ton of spaces. I know there was an issue in the NCAA recently. They're trying to ban athletes from using prediction markets too. So this is kind of the Wild West. And like when everything is sort of a two-sided trade, I think it makes sense for the Senate to step in and say, yeah, like we have way too much sort of sensitive information. I know, Congress appeal ratings are kind of consistently at an all-time low. So good to at least get this done, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if it goes through the House too.
Yeah, and you mentioned the sports related one. There was obviously the one that made big headlines last week when I think was it a Green Beret? He was allegedly caught using classified information to trade on the Maduro capture, and he paid like $400,000 on insider trading. So that's another one. The whole insider trading thing has been really.
It also is a security risk too, because like if someone notices that they're trading on that like before the actual capture or safety of like whatever category it is, like it could really impact the outcome.
Yeah,
I think we see this in general. Yeah, I'm
just reading here too. As of April 2026, Kalshi has suspended 3 congressional candidates for betting on their own election races, citing violations of insider trading rules.
Hey, why can't we bet on ourselves?
Yeah, bet on yourself, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is funny because this also came up in sports where I think it was a Wisconsin or a Texas Tech football player was betting, I believe it was on a traditional sports gambling platform like DraftKings or something, but was betting on the team to win. And I think like I get, point shaving and throwing games, like to enter a congressional race just to bet on yourself to lose would be a very interesting wealth creation strategy.
Then it's like, what are you doing to cause yourself to lose? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's good to see progress here. I know it's like obviously going to be an issue that we continue to deal with as all this litigation unfolds, and we'll see where it ends up. I know CFTC has taken a strong stance on preemption, but we'll see how it plays out in that space.
And then just another note that this is the Senate currently, and Gerald, you mentioned how to see how it fares in the House, but Moreno did say, I think it was Moreno, or it might have been one of the other senators said, we're on recess this week, but when we get back, we are going to start working on how we're going to expand this ban to members of the administration as well. So
yeah,
just something to watch.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. But speaking of members of the administration, Cantor Fitzgerald, former Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick, who is of course now Commerce Secretary, he's been sent a letter by a big scary letter by Elizabeth Warren and Senator Wyden, basically digging into a loan that was allegedly made to Lutnick by his friend Paolo Ardoino. I never say his name.
Ardoino.
Ardoino.
Yep. Paolo Ardoino. Yeah.
I wish I had the Italian accent to say it.
Yeah, there we go.
But the crux is basically they want to make sure that Tether has not tried to basically bribe Lutnick, given this loan that was made by
Usually
Tether.
I'm looking for people who've done something.
Oh,
It's early. It's early out here in Vegas.
That fine.
Checking to make sure you guys are awake. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, Eleanor, is I think the other, if I'm understanding the mechanics here correctly, essentially what the probe is looking into is whether or not Tether extended the loan to Cantor Fitzgerald for his sons to be able to take over the business. And so whether or not, because I think we already knew that Lutnick was a stakeholder in Tether prior to him coming into the administration. So it's more about, whether or not there was any kind of conflict of interest in extending credit to someone in and of itself is not an ethical issue. Right. Extending credit to someone with an expectation of some kind of quid pro quo on like a policy or commercial front is like obviously a slightly bigger issue. So maybe it won't go anywhere. Maybe it'll cause some issues. I'm not really sure. I think like out of all the potential conflicts of interest that we've seen, with folks out there, this one is probably on the lower end of my like shock value scale. But still interesting to see Warren just out there finding things to do.
Finding something else to poke at. Did they reply to it, either of them, like publicly?
I don't think they have yet.
Not that I've seen. They just sent it yesterday, but they call it a national security risk surrounding reported Lutnick Tether loans. So yeah, to your point about national security risks earlier, Jacqueline, I think for a long time, definitely the Senate, people in the House as well, regulators were very skeptical of Tether just because of their offshore operations. There was always questions around their reserves and sort of their clientele, right? Like who's actually buying Tether and, illicit finance and all that stuff, right? So, bringing in national security risks and putting that in the headline is obviously going to grab media attention, but it'll be interesting to see if Lutnick himself responds and interestingly as well, if Paolo responds. But I think that relationship was always interesting to me because they were acquaintances. Howard was always kind of in on the Tether business. He was bullish on Tether before entering the administration. Cantor was kind of the one that gave Tether, I think, some legitimacy in the US because, like I said, for a long time, everybody was a little bit skeptical, more than a little bit skeptical. And when Cantor came in and said, oh, no, the reserves are there and we can vouch for Tether, that's kind of when they started feeling more comfortable coming out and doing more media. If you kind of notice, that was sort of like that coincided, I think. So Cantor sort of treated them in that way.
Well, and so Tether obviously has historically had a much bigger presence outside the US than in the US. And then you've had Circle kind of dominating the US markets. And so, with the passage of Genius, the launch of USAT, bringing Bo in, I think there is like a much bigger sense of legitimacy there. And I don't necessarily interpret this as a question around Tether's legitimacy. It's more just like, a probe of these are like very vanilla, like regular business dealing ethical concerns, right? It's not like a terrorism thing. It's not like an illicit finance thing. It's like, hey, we just want to know exactly what the expectations were here, when this transaction took place. And so, we'll see how it goes.
I know Eleanor mentioned this too. And so Howard Lutnick's Cantor is now under the watch of his son, Brandon Lutnick, which is now the chairman and CEO. But Cantor is the biggest donor, I read, of Fellowship PAC, which is like the fairly new political action committee that spent a few $1 million supporting Republicans in various Senate and House positions. So I could imagine there's probably some underlying tones here that contributed to this letter.
Yes. And we were talking about
that's a polite way to put it.
We were talking about this at dinner last night. I actually had a story I was working on about Cantor and Cantor and Fellowship PAC and the donation that Fellowship made to Attorney General Ken Paxton. So just in a nutshell, basically, the Fellowship PAC is, from what we understand and from public filings, it's basically run by the chairman is Jesse Spiro, right? He's sort of the he's the policy guy, the Washington guy for Tether, and then Cantor, I think, is in on it as well. And it's still kind of like opaque. I don't think there's like too much documentation around it, but from what we can gather, it's Cantor and Tether. But they just rolled out a lot of endorsements for candidates. There's FEC filings which show allotted money that they plan to spend on advertising. And so with a super PAC like that, they can't actually donate money to candidates directly, but they can spend on advertising, which is something that we saw with Fair Shake in 2024. And apparently the fellowship PAC, and I went and verified this, they had allotted some money to Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's going up against Senator John Cornyn. And the Cornyn's camp obviously didn't like it. Someone who is on Cornyn's campaign manager is Chris LaSavita, who was a campaign manager for Trump during the 2024 election. Allegedly, there was a phone call made to Howard Lutnick, who then called the fellowship PAC and said, "Guys, we can't do this donation. We gotta rake that money back in." And all of a sudden, the FEC filing was updated, and there was no more allotment for Ken Paxton. So I actually was working on that story, and then I will give credit to Axios where it's due, because they beat me on that story. But that was an interesting involvement there too. So, it's campaign season. There's going to be a lot of phone calls made and money being donated and thrown around. So, but I thought that was an interesting little tidbit about Howard Lutnick there.
Yeah, well, and just to your broader point, like all the names that you just mentioned in that sort of like tree, the world is small, right? The world is very small. So, and I'm sure on your point about election season, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about as things ramp up on the PAC side and people start positioning for the fall. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of PACs, I don't know if we've had any updates. I feel like I need to do a better job of making sure we cover the donations and.
Really, don't put that on yourself. Effort.
No. I just feel like it 2024
newsletter.
Yeah, just in the newsletter, but also like when we do the Friday live show, like just. I mean, I feel like there is just so much.
We should have a PAC day, have them all on and let them fight.
We should have like I don't know, maybe I'll put it in the newsletter, like a way to like track, or not like a way to track, but just like, an update, maybe like a.
Are we going to become FEC watchdogs? Is that where? That's
the thing. I also don't want to do that, because that's just like, that kind of like gets. Yeah, that gets a little. That's hard work too. Just like combing through the FEC filings, you have to have like that stuff on alert.
You can get a little Claude bot to do that.
I was gonna say, I'm sure we can bot it somehow. Yeah. But we'll figure it out. We'll keep the audience updated.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was So, well, speaking of candidates and election season and all of the above, I'm really excited for our next guest, because I actually have not chatted with John in a while, but we go back to the early days of the Ripple case, and John is here actually in Las Vegas with us, but we are doing the show remotely just because it's a lot easier to get us all into the framing of the camera. If you know anything about
how it's made,
it's made, how the sauce is made. It is much easier to do these things from our own computer. So John is here in the hotel, but we're actually going to be, Gerald and I, we're going to be sitting down with John later this morning. We're going to be doing a panel talking about his campaign. As I mentioned earlier, he is running again for the Senate. He's this time not against Elizabeth Warren. Unfortunately, he is running against Senator Ed Markey, who is the junior senator from Massachusetts. And we're going to talk to him about the campaign. And we're also going to talk to him about where things stand on crypto. We're going to get into all these things, but we're going to do a little preview of that right now with John. We're going to bring him on. John, welcome to the show. This is your first time on Crypto in America. I can't believe it.
Yes, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure, Ellie. It's funny. I just want everyone to understand the context. You said, and you're right, that I'm going against the junior senator from Massachusetts who happens to be 80, and he's been in office for 53 years. So,
oof. I don't know how junior that is.
That's a wild stat. Yeah.
Wow. As I tell everyone, you can clearly see that by anyone's standard, I am no longer a young man. But Ed Markey's first year in office, I was 6. So what's in perspective?
Yeah, and I think you are running one of your campaign messages or one of your campaign promises is, trying to figure out this whole thing around term limits, right? But that is a whole segment we could probably talk to you, for many minutes on. But I do want to get into some more sort of like crypto in America related stuff as well as your campaign. But to start, let's maybe just wind it back a little bit and just go back to 2024 when you were taking on Elizabeth Warren. I mean, that was really such a interesting time for crypto. I mean, it was so hot on the political agenda. Crypto had kind of had its moment, right? Trump was supporting it. You were going up against Warren, who had her famous like anti-crypto stance. And, you've also been dubbed the crypto lawyer. They still call you that, even though you've done, you are a lawyer, you have your own law firm, but you represented 75,000 XRP holders as a Michi in the Ripple case. But the headline, whenever I see an article about you, it's like pro crypto lawyer. It's John Deaton. But this race against Markey feels much less crypto driven, even though he does have an F rating on Stand With Crypto. I think he voted against Genius. He's voted against some of the other pro crypto legislation that's gone through Congress. Why is it so kind of less crypto focused this time around, would you say, than with Warren?
Well, with Warren, and I could never figure out at first, why did Elizabeth Warren, with so many things going on, foreign wars, inflation, all the housing crisis, you name it, there's so many things to worry about. And when Elizabeth Warren announced her reelection, she focused on crypto. Her bill, as you know, Ellie, was a de facto ban on the self-custody of Bitcoin or XRP or any crypto asset. And I couldn't figure it out. And then she went on America, Good Morning with Chuck Todd. She went on that show with Chuck Todd. And she told me why. I figured it out. She said that America is ready for a consumer-based central bank digital currency. And to me, that is 1984, George Orwell, Big Brother is coming to take over your life. And if they can control your money, they control your entire life. And so I got in the race. She was the face of the anti-crypto army. And I think that is probably the reason. Now, Markey is he's more left than Warren, just about on every issue. He against Bitcoin. He's obviously voted against the Genius Act. But right now, the real focus for everyone, and Massachusetts is the center of it, which is this affordability crisis. We just learned today that our debt exceeds our economy, right? We're over 100% GDP with our national debt. That is an absolute disgusting betrayal of young people. And I keep trying to tell everybody, it's not about right versus left, Democrat versus Republican. Career politicians who have spent decades, both Republicans and Democrats, are the cause of this. They have printed money that they haven't had, $2 trillion a year for so many years, and they have stolen the prosperity of young people. I have people ask me why I get so angry, why I'm so passionate. I have 26, 24, and 7-year-old daughters. And when I was their age, I was guaranteed to do better than my parents if I was willing to work for it. That guarantee does not exist today. My children are not guaranteed to do better than their father if they're willing to work for it. And that is the first time that's happened in American history. And it's these career politicians. That's why I tell everyone, vote all the bums out. Lindsey Graham, vote him out. He's Republican. I'm a Republican. Vote him out. All right. Same thing with Ed Markey. He's a Democrat. Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell. They've all stolen young people's prosperity, and everyone should be angry about it.
Yeah. So, John, I know you also, I believe, published a book. Is it Food Stamp Warrior on partially tackling some of these issues? You had a pretty good showing, I would say, for someone as entrenched as Warren. Losing that race by a margin that I think probably was narrower than maybe some people expected. What do you think is different about going up against Markey in this type of a climate with all the things that you're kind of talking about? Like where do you see the odds kind of swinging in your favor this time around?
No, question. Thank you for it. I didn't pick an easy hill to climb my first time out, right? Taking on Elizabeth Warren. And, when you look at the stats, I got my butt kicked. Like, I'm the first one to admit it. But as a first-time no-name candidate who was in a contested primary, in Massachusetts, the primary is September 1st. It is so late. When you count early mail-in voting, you only have 6 weeks. But I was the first Republican to get over 40% in many, and believe it or not, I was the best performing non-incumbent Republican Senate candidate in the country. I outperformed President Trump by 140,000 votes. I'm the only U.S. Senate candidate. And so this time, the Massachusetts GOP endorsed me from the outgo. So I don't have a primary opponent. And Massachusetts has 65% of the voters are registered independents. It's called unenrolled voters in Massachusetts. It's the highest in the country. So the reality is Republicans are only 8% of the electorate as far as registered voters. Democrats are 25%. And then you have 65% are independent. So now I get to take a common sense approach to those independents, including disenfranchised Democrats, while Ed Markey and Seth Moulton have a primary. I'm pretty confident Markey's up by 20 points. He'll probably win it. But while they're talking like extreme stuff, biological boys get to beat up girls, open borders, citizenship, in addition to amnesty for everybody in the world, no matter if you came here and you even been charged with a felony, just radical stuff. And I just get to talk to people about common sense approach. I'm not a partisan person. I don't have a loyalty to a person or a party. And I think we need somebody like that who just doesn't care about party politics, just wants to help regular people.
Yeah, John, can you talk a little bit more about that for our audience, just on, the saying in DC is tough primary, easy general, right? And so when you're talking about Markey going up in a primary, you see a lot of candidates on the left get pushed further into some of those extreme positions that you mentioned. And then on the Republican side, I think the same thing happens. When you have a very contested primary, there's sort of this competition to take on these extreme views. Looking at how big the middle is in Massachusetts, what does that do for you as a candidate to be able to take some of these more what I would like common sense approaches in your campaign?
Yeah, it really gives me the path to victory. I would only be in this race if I was confident I could avoid the contested primary, because like when I debated Elizabeth Warren, I won the primary last time by 65%. We want Elizabeth Warren to debate me the next day in September. She refused. She waited until voting had already started. 25% of all votes cast before I took the stage against her. She played that incumbency card. And so being able to avoid that while they're doing that, and it's the entire difference, in the entire world. They're going to be spending millions. Seth Moulton has a super PAC that just put out an ad against Markey. A lot of people thought it was me attacking Markey, and it's called, it's a doctor who appears on the screen and says we have an epidemic in this country called chronic reelection syndrome, and it talks about all these career politicians. He's going to be spending millions building those negatives up while I'm talking about your electric bill. Markey is the co-author of the Green New Deal. Well, guess what? We've adopted in Massachusetts his policies. We pay the highest electricity prices in the continental United States. Chevy Chase, Maryland, where Markey lives, he pays less than double. He pays 16 cents per kilowatt hour. We pay 33 cents. He doesn't even have to live under his policies. I get to talk about nuclear. The problem, and Ed Markey won't even consider nuclear energy, which is the cleanest and safest, in my opinion, 97% efficiency, carbon free. Markey won't even consider it. And I honestly, I know it sounds funny, but I honestly think it's because he's thinking of Chernobyl in the 80s when he was in office, right? Like he's locked in there thinking about, and the tech has improved. It's 40 years later. And I just get to talk about those common sense table issues. And I think people are ready for someone who isn't about the party. You're going to see me on stage and I will make it clear. Ed Markey stands on that stage as a Democrat. I stand on that stage as an American. There are two fundamentally different ways. He's fighting against Trump. I don't care who the president is. I'll be honest. If you have one test, and in that test is it good for Massachusetts and America? If it is, Call it progressive. I don't care. Call it conservative, call it liberal. If it's good for it, I'll support it. If it's not, I won't. And I think we need that kind of approach.
John, you've been in crypto for years, as we've kind of already covered here. And like the industry has obviously evolved, but some of these same issues remain. And you're talking about all these different aspects, conflict of interest, fraud, and you've been vocal about a bunch of different areas. So where would you say the state of the industry stands today then for the crypto front?
Well, I think that, it's come obviously a long way. There's just a night and day difference between Paul Atkins and Gary Gensler. The problem for everyone out there, let me just be blunt, we have a problem in this country where we go from one extreme to the other extreme. And crypto is one more example. So we went from the boot of the government's boot on the neck of the industry, choke point 2.0, debanking, the regulation by enforcement, where Coinbase gets an accelerated IPO because it's in the public's best interest. Less than 2 years later, they have an illegal business model, right? And Gensler's suing them. We go from that to the Trump coin. Like, how about is there somewhere in the middle that we can find smart, tailored regulations? And unfortunately, I think that crypto, because of Elizabeth Warren primarily, became a partisan issue where it became Republicans favored it, Democrats different. But then I think it's more of a generational thing now. You have people like Ed Markey, who's a Democrat, obviously, he's against it with Warren. But then you have younger ones like, Richie Torres and others like that who are more in favor for it. So I think we're getting there. Obviously, the tie up with the Clarity Act is that because of, the Trump coin and holding these events at the White House and World Liberty Financial and all of those things, because people on the other side hate Trump so much and hate his family so much, it's becoming partisan. And so there's going to be demanding some kind of like conflict of interest issue that maybe family members can't be involved in crypto. It's unfortunate, but that's the nature. And we're in the midterms right now. And, if the Clarity Act doesn't get passed very soon, I'm afraid it won't.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I think people are now referring to the ethics issues as a potential poison pill for this bill. Do you see it that way? Obviously, we are running low on time to get a bill through the Senate, but if the distaste for what has been going on, with the Trump coin and the platforms and, the in-person meetings, and is that really going to throw this thing off sort of at the 11th hour, as it were? Do you see that becoming a real problem?
I do. And I'll tell you why. One of the things I'm going to say about Markey and even Moulton, who's challenging Markey on the Democratic side, and this applies to many of them, I'm going to say, you hate Trump more than you love America or Massachusetts. And you've got it in that. And so because the Trump name is so divisive for people on the left, I think they're going to demand some kind of, ethics rule. I mean, and listen, there are some things that need to be addressed. I mean, when someone bets $500 million on oil 20 minutes before a tweet, it's an issue. We got to be honest about these things. There are insiders clearly benefiting. We don't know who they are, right? But clearly some kind of investigation should be into that, because if you or I do it, we go to prison. And so because there is some kind of abuses going on, I think it rises the ethics issue, and it gives people an out, right? To say, I'm not anti-crypto, but I am anti, grift. And unfortunately, that Trump thing, that is divisive. I deal with it all the time in Massachusetts, where even if it's good for America, and I think the Genius Act, it's got some issues, obviously, that you've talked about on this platform, but having some kind of clarity for businesses moving forward is important, and innovation should never be partisan. And we should win the race with blockchain. We should win the race with AI. We should win the race with quantum computing, robotics, you name it. And unfortunately, we're in this divisive, toxic world that I fear, and I hope I'm wrong, but I fear it's going to derail it.
Yeah, John, I want to get your thoughts on that. Obviously, very important to focus on the real sort of technological changes we have in front of us, as America tries to compete over the next decade. But I think the president actually himself recently, when asked about prediction markets by a reporter in the Oval Office, gave some kind of comment that like, well, everything's a casino now. And, we were talking earlier on the show about prediction markets. Massachusetts has a relatively active gaming industry, I think, but we've seen, the CFTC come out very strongly in support of federal preemption. We were talking earlier about the Senate moving to ban prediction markets trading for its members. What are your thoughts on kind of the issues that creates more broadly? Like, as a candidate, do you want to see like there's obviously sensible futures regulation, and a lot of these products are simply binary futures. But how do we kind of rein that in? Like, or is sort of the cat out of the bag, or like, where do we go from here? Just knowing, all the challenges it's creating.
Yeah, no, it is a great question to ask. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, we get extremes, right? And one extreme is, we need to ban it. I'm never going to, I believe in freedom. I believe in consumer protection. I'm someone who wants the customer and the consumer to be protected, and having a wild, wild west without any regulations is a problem. And then, of course, having too many regulations, or regulation by enforcement and a lack of clarity, is also a problem. And unfortunately, we're often told to choose between this binary choice that we just got to ban it, or we got to let it be. And I think that's a false choice, that there is a ground where you can have sensible, tailored regulations that protect consumers, that establish some guidelines, establish conflicts of interest, that establish and harsh penalties for any of the bad guys and the fraudsters. You can do it, but it takes people to get in the room and actually talk to each other. And that's the problem that we have in Congress. They're the only people, and I have complete disdain for the members of Congress. Let me make it clear. I plan to go to Washington. I'm not there to make friends, all right, because I think all of them suck. And I said that on the stage to Elizabeth Warren, that shocked everyone during the debate, because I said to Elizabeth Warren, I said, Elizabeth Warren's up here saying, Republicans are all bad and Democrats are all good. And I looked at her and I said, I got news for you, Senator. All of you suck in Congress, every single one of you. And I feel that way, and I think that most Americans feel that way as well. And so we've got to get adults in the room where they'll actually sit down and say, how can we protect the little guy, without over excessive. I mean, here's the problem in Massachusetts, and this is my fear of the people that are in charge there. In 1980, a company went public. And all of a sudden, the regulators, the state SEC level regulators in Massachusetts in 1980 said, that is too speculative. Only stockbrokers and accredited investors can buy this IPO, which anyone should be able to buy. And they prevented it. That company was called Apple. And a $1,000 investment in 1980, you're a millionaire today. And they prevented regular people from buying it because they were protecting us from ourselves. I don't believe in a nanny state, but a sensible way of regulating and punishing wrongdoers is a way that we do it.
Mm-hmm. John, I know all three of you are on the ground at XRP Vegas. I've got to ask you, what would be your message to the XRP community, and what are your hopes here?
Well, listen, we were on the tip of the spear when I took on the SEC, and Ellie's right. I've been a mesothelioma asbestos lawyer for 30 years, but I'm always described as a crypto lawyer. I've never actually made money as a lawyer in crypto. All my work has been pro bono.
Okay.
But I'm known as a crypto lawyer. There's reason to celebrate. I mean, when I filed the motion to intervene in the Ripple case, that was the single biggest non-fraud SEC enforcement action in modern history. And I went to the court and said, look, at that time I had 12,500 XRP holders who were trying to go into court and say, we're defendants too. You've de facto sued us, so we want to be heard in court. It rose to 75,000. And we actually changed and made a difference. And no one can say we didn't, because when Judge Torres ruled XRP itself is not a security, she cited my amicus brief. She cited the 4,000 XRP holder affidavits I submitted. And in footnote 16 of her decision, she cited the oral argument in the library case that I was at as well. So we went into court, an asbestos lawyer that securities lawyers made fun of me. Ellie knows this. They were making fun of me. They were calling me a clown. Who's this asbestos lawyer think he is? And we made history, and I'm very proud of that. And they gave me the voice to do it. It's getting taught in law school, actually. I know law schools that are taking the Ripple case. They call it decentralized justice, where all of this community, 75,000 people, got together, petitioned the court, was named amicus, and actually made a difference in that case. And so, as Brad Garlinghouse said, XRP itself already has clarity. Whether Clarity Act gets passed or not, that's the law. So I think things are looking good. In Vegas, XRP is on every sign except for the sphere, all across.
We talked about that. Yeah, next year.
All across Vegas. And so they're probably by far the best, most united crypto community of all communities. I stand by that. And 75,000 of them proved it.
Well, John, we'll continue the conversation in about 2 hours on stage. We're looking forward to seeing you there.
Hey, listen, it's been a pleasure to be with you. I'm glad that I got to be with you all. I look forward to coming back. And when I win this race and I'm a U.S. Senator, I will be just as excited to you as I am right now.
Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
All right. Have a good one.
Well, joining us now is Gabor Gurbacs. He's the CEO and founder of OpenAssets. He was an early architect of institutional crypto. He helped push Bitcoin into Wall Street through VanEck's ETF efforts, and he's now building the rails for tokenized capital markets. And he just announced a new partnership with Chainlink to help bring institutional assets on chain. Gabor, welcome to Crypto in America.
Hey, Eleanor, team, and everybody. Good to be with you.
Welcome.
Welcome. So before we get into the partnership, let's take a bit of a step back. You were at VanEck and helped lead some of the earliest Bitcoin ETF efforts. I remember covering that time very well. And I remember you were very active on crypto Twitter. And, we've been talking about, we're in Vegas at this conference, and we've been talking about, institutional flows into crypto, into ETFs, index funds. We now have digital asset treasury companies. But from where you sit and your experience in this industry, what's your read on the state of institutional crypto today?
Yeah, definitely a much better place than 12 years ago. And all the things that we've been talking around in 13 and 14 actually became real. And so we are, the most important thing I care about right now is infrastructure to bring more institutions on. First, I wanted to put Bitcoin into ETFs, and I would like to put ETFs on Bitcoin. And so that's basically what we are working on. My company, OpenAssets, provides infrastructures to some of the largest companies in the world, including Tether, the Intercontinental Exchange, Chainlink, Amazon, and a few others. And these are the rails that we need to bring more compliant capital on chain. And so specifically, I care about, again, digitizing equities, bonds, commodities, and make sure that institutions can offer their own offering to the various environments they work in. Some more on the crypto side, some more on the institutional side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen a lot of institutions come in through the ETFs in the last, 3 years now. But a lot of that capital has been passive. In your view, what does real institutional adoption look like? Is it really active? I mean, what's kind of the play that you're seeing, and also what you're doing with OpenAssets?
Yeah, so definitely. So first, ETFs brought in the first 2 years brought about $200 billion of capital into Bitcoin and various crypto assets. I think that's going to significantly increase in the next 3 years as people learn about the asset classes. Those instruments are just getting approved in banks and wirehouses and so on. But the largest part of institutionalization is not going to happen on ETFs. It's going to happen after ETFs. So we're building the post-ETF world we think that whatever the instrument is going to be called is going to be a tokenized ETF. So as we went from basically stocks and bonds to hedge funds to mutual funds and ETFs, investment wrappers got better, faster, and cheaper. So that's happening now. And most large consultants expect anywhere between $10 to $68 trillion to move on chain by 2030. So that's what we are after. We are not after the $200 billion ETF flows, but we are wrapping basically traditional financial instruments and new types of offering into a tokenized forms, so that the crypto native and sort of like unbrokered and unbanked population can access it. And just a statistic too, it's 2026 and 65% of the world is still unbanked, and 92% of the world does not have a brokerage account. So that is basically the universe that we are targeting to provide financial products to. And we are seeing, again, up to 68 trillion of capital coming on chain within the next 4 to 5 years. So we're building the infrastructure for it. We're working with the largest stablecoin provider in the world, Tether. We're working with the largest exchange infrastructure group, the Intercontinental Exchange, Chainlink on the Oracle side, Amazon's AWS and its partner network, which is sort of the largest cloud provider. So we're putting all these steps in place, which was basically what I've done with the ETFs before they got approved. So very excited about it.
Yeah. As we operate in this like post-ETF world, do you kind of see ETFs and tokenization starting to compete with one another for market share, or are they complementing each other now?
First complement, then compete. When I entered the ETF space in 2014, ETF were about a $1 trillion market. Right now, they're more like a $24 trillion market, and ETFs compete with mutual funds. I think tokenized assets will in some form compete with ETFs. And the interesting thing is, like, even ETFs are restricted to live basically on this inefficient railways. And so we are actually making some of the rails better behind ETFs. So it should, at least for a few years, help ETFs grow. And I think some ETFs should reconsider wrapping themselves into tokenized form to sort of just get in front of the new generation of investors. And so first complement, then compete, but definitely make more efficient. The financial system lives on a 50-year-old stack. It's extremely inefficient, and settlement is kind of non-existent today, and it takes 2 days to settle a trade. And so that should change. The process of launching an asset today costs you around basically somewhere between 3 to 10% of the value of your offering. We can make that 10 to 30 times more efficient with tokenization. So that's why we work with some of the largest companies in the world to enable this, efficiency into the part of ETFs and mutual funds that are unseen, and bring about a much more efficient structure. And this is, one example is, in the stablecoin fund, for instance, Tether did a really good job offering better, faster, cheaper rails to access the US dollar, which was the first tokenized real world asset. Now the rest of the capital market stack is coming online and bringing that efficiency in the center into the market. And yeah, all of this is built in the US, and I'm excited about this. My team is mostly in Pittsburgh and some places around the world as well, but there's definitely an infrastructure revolution in sort of like the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest, but there's also a digital infrastructure revolution. And you see some companies from Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus, and some of this area create significant digital asset infrastructure, and also some defense tech. So excited that this region is finally getting recognized.
Right?
What's that?
The crypto is back in America.
Yeah, exactly. People don't see that much, but there's a lot of builders in the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest, and the two coasts of the United States tend to be covered, New York and Miami on the east, and the Valley in the west. But a lot of the products that are presented in the west and in the east are made in the middle of the country. So we were excited to be one of the companies doing it.
Yeah, Gabor, I want to get your perspective, given your history in the asset management space, on kind of the human side of this. So, you're mentioning kind of the history of these, managed funds going from something like a mutual fund, which was less efficient than an ETF. And then we saw Vanguard introduce these like near zero fee ETFs. It seems like tokenization will produce a lot of efficiencies on the asset itself. But now we're entering into this new sort of potential AI-driven asset management era where you may be taking a human somewhat out of the loop. Obviously, there's complicated legal issues around that. We don't have to get into that. But do you see efficiency from like a management and fee perspective with this model, or how do you see that changing for the asset management space going forward, given the improvements with tokenization?
Yeah, so I think again, there's not much to be improved on the few basis point, asset offering of the ETF itself, but the actual IPOs, the underlying stocks, the trading, the settlement pieces of it, they're incredibly expensive and time consuming. So that's like 100 times that, the cost of the few basis points that investors see on the top, and no one talks about it. So it costs multiple percents and gets passed on to the investor to actually offer these super cheap ETFs that are not super cheap. So we're actually making them cheap and affordable and accessible on the back end. So the offering and the settlement piece of it. And so that would be one part that, the reality is that mutual funds and ETFs are very expensive. It's just not on the, not from the asset management side, but the offering and the trading and the settlement side. The human piece of it that you've been asking for, I always thought that the battle is crypto versus AI, and crypto is the piece that will preserve humanity. So I think as far as humans protect value through crypto rails and sort of controlling keys, that's the only way for us to be relevant in the era of robots. And the humanity that I personally care about is, again, this statistic that 2% of the world does not have access to a brokerage account, and 65% does not have access to a bank account. So we are providing that for the first time through various partners. So that should allow people to participate in markets, simply just to save their money and then eventually invest their money and create insurance policies for their children, buy their first house. And again, all of us and most people who are watching this are lucky enough to have various brokerage accounts and access to ways to pay, but that's not the case around the world. So again, on one side, there's going to be actual efficiency on the trading and settlement, issuance, trading, and settlement side of the financial products in developed markets like the US. And on the other side, we'll see a lot more people being included. And I also think that what we are working on is less of a doomer story. What you're seeing from Silicon Valley, like AI is going to take your jobs and make you irrelevant. We're fighting for humanity and trying to provide tools for humanity so we're relevant decades into the future. So if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that quote. In a world of AI and crypto is what's going to keep us human. I had a whole panel on that yesterday, so I'm going to steal that one, but I'm going to credit
All
you for
yours.
it. Gabor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Yeah, Keith Grossman from MoonPay and I did a whole panel on like AI agents and how that's going to become the new norm. And then I see this AI video of me. Someone took my photo that I posted yesterday of myself in front of the XRP sign, and AI rocked it into a video of me twerking. So that was it's horrid. Actually, to the untrained eye, I think anybody like maybe over the age of like, I don't know, 50 would look at that and be like, well, Eleanor's having a good time. That's not me.
It's scary what's possible with AI today.
Yeah.
I
do just want to do a little shout out to our Subway ad because I think those come down, I think, this week. So we've had a really good run with those. And yeah, that's us last week. We
finally made it to the one all the way down on Wall Street, which was fun. It was kind of a crazy journey, a little anecdotal conversation. Like we stopped at 3 different stops. We did not see it at the first stop. The second stop, we saw it for like a second, and then we all thought we were hallucinating because it didn't come up again for 7 minutes. And then the Wall Street stop had us up literally the whole time, which is great. So we took some photos there, had fun, and then Gerald jetted off to the airport, but it was fun.
Yeah. That was a good time. So it's been fun with the buses and the ads, but well, good show, guys. And see you next week.
Have fun in Vegas. See you guys next week in Miami.
Thanks, guys.
All right.